this session will be focused on the future of crowdfunding, marketplaces, and listing sites in West Africa. The session will be moderated by Roland Igbenoba, founder of Nigerian PropTech Association, and the panelists will include Abdullah Hakim Sadiq, who just presented on Zama, he's the founder and CEO, Daniel Block, CEO of Seso Global, and Emeka Ndukwa, CEO of Crowdfunding. So on that note, I'll hand over to Roland. Roland, have you been able to share your audio? We'll just wait for Roland before I hand over.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
I'm here. You don't have to wait any further.
Great. Yeah, over to you, Roland.
Okay, great, Kefi. Thank you so much. Happy to be with you guys. I mean, I can see all the usual suspects who are pushing property technology in Africa. So I'm so glad to have you guys, Abdullah Hakim, Seso, and Daniel. You know, so your name is saying I know you're Seso, but at least let's know you're Daniel Block, right? And then Chukwuemeka Ndukwe. It's great to see to meet you guys here. Now, what's been very interesting, I mean, I see that there's been a lot of work, you know, I mean, just looking at the pitch from the different startups, you know, that we just had, you know, it tells you that there's a lot of innovation and creativity in the market, right? In the marketplace. Now, one thing that I have seen speaking to a lot of these startups, whether they are requiring seed capital or whether it's Series A funding, it's financing. Okay, yeah. And I think this is where crowdfunding really comes into play. So what I want to start by asking each one of you, okay, in your various experiences, okay, how have you seen crowdfunding, you know, in your various regions, and what kind of impact do you think that this might even have on this PropTech world that we are seriously working to create in Africa? So I'll start with you, Abdullah Hakim.
Okay, thanks for having me, and good morning to Daniel and Chukwuemeka. It's a pleasure speaking with you guys. Yes, it's with crowdfunding, it's quite an interesting one. First of all, it's something that has been used to finance or fund various ideas and projects from different parts of the world. In 2016, just around $700 million was raised for different ventures and different ideas around the world. So it is a unique means in which different individuals and corporate organizations are looking to fund their ideas and business opportunities that they have seen. However, bringing it back home, the challenge really with crowdfunding is, for instance, the law. In Nigeria, we really don't have a crowdfunding law, so we don't have a legal system that actually supports or even backs it as a practice. However, innovation of precedes legislation. You know, Nigeria will have to adjust to. There's been a lot of talk by the Securities and Exchange Commission coming in to regulate the practice. Because there are some crowdfunding platforms that have come in, but largely in the agriculture sector. We have the likes of, I think, Pork Invest, Piggy Invest, Private Grig. You know, these are the guys that actually have come on board and are using funding from different individuals to actually support a project. However, again, the issue of the law not being able to support or protect investment is really the main issue. And that really has served the challenge or the barrier for entry, because when I was looking at opportunities in crowdfunding businesses, I realized that there's really no protection for my investment, and everything that I would do would basically have to be dependent on the professionalism or the feedback that I get from the service provider. So again, I did my research and I realized that the SEC is trying to create some level of control to this business, you know, because you can crowdfund for different reasons. You know, you can crowdfund for equity investments, you can crowdfund for based on rewards, or you can crowdfund based on I think donations. You know, so the challenge is really on these businesses focusing on which angle they want to operate in, and the SEC is more focused on that equity aspect of things, because they believe any business that raises capital is basically acting in capital market services, and they need to be regulated by law. So the challenge of that is really the problem that I see with crowdfunding. However, I don't see it going away. I see something coming to stay. It's just about the regulators adjusting to that reality. You know, I read somewhere about some barriers that they put in place of companies that wanted to operate in crowdfunding must raise a capital of about 100 million naira. Now, if you look at that amount of money, Roland, you realize that not a lot of startup businesses can raise that as capital.
Absolutely.
So really, these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with, and I'll let the rest of the guys, chip into this on their thoughts.
Yeah. So okay, great, Daniel. Yeah. I mean, I'll come to a lot of the things that you have highlighted. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And yeah, pleasure to you guys. Abdulakim and Chukwemeka. So yeah, I think great points. And I think I would just touch on as well that, I think Emeka will talk about how he does crowdfunding more on the development financing side. What I think we need to do is also kind of split it up. There's different types, as Joachim said, types of crowdfunding. It's not all the same. It needs to be thought about, are we buying the property? Are we crowdfunding for development financing? And I always think one thing that's definitely missed out is that people always talk about the issues raising the funding. But I would say the bigger issue is getting the yields, So you really can only get people to do crowdfunding if you offer them a percentage. But as we all know, the real estate markets are not so secure and guaranteed. So what happens when you don't give the returns? I think there was recently a Nigerian agricultural crowdfunding platform that recently said that they couldn't give their returns. And if you get on housing where the ticket sizes might be bigger, it can maybe even more of a concern. I always say when people say, do you have properties we could crowdfund? I always think, yes, I have properties I could crowdfund, but I don't have, thugs locally that maybe can go, kick the people out if, or get the rents if, you need to collect. So, beyond just the tech, you might need a collections business as well. So I think we need to think maybe a bit more. I think the developers also need to understand how it works for them. I just know one thing we're working on right now is a crowdfunding project with a American diaspora group, but they're more looking to work with a very specific developer in Ghana and work with him. So it'll be crowdfunding, but he will more be a contractor. They'll build the rules in with their group. The group will manage it. So I think is now as well, if larger groups, come together and they maybe do a specific crowdfunding campaign. And I think, Emeka is the one in the industry can tell us more. But once we see successes, I think there'll be more of it. And, with regulation also makes it easier. But, it goes that end. It's not as easy as just raising the money and buying it because, if you can only get the people by offering returns. If you can't offer the returns, then, things could sour very fast.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll come to a point that you've also made, Daniel, in terms of, so what I want to find out is, I keep talking about the regulations not in existence in Nigeria versus you talking about a diasporan group trying to do stuff in Ghana. So just hold your thoughts. I'm wondering, is there regulation in Ghana? But we'll come to that, right? So Chukwemeka, let me hear your thoughts on crowdfunding there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hello, Daniel, and hello, Abdul Hakim. I mean, so first and foremost, the short answer to your question is no. There is no regulations for crowdfunding in Ghana, the same way there's no regulations for crowdfunding in Nigeria. However, I think the Nigerian market has been able to kind of create some form of best practices, industry, just some things that the players in industry sort of agree to abide by, things like that. Those things don't really exist in Ghana yet. I think on average, there's maybe 100 crowdfunding companies in Nigeria. In Ghana, it's maybe 10 to 12. So there's not really been a chance for that to develop. But what I would say is the potential for crowdfunding is to democratize financing. Before crowdfunding came up as a form of raising financing, there was this tendency for the best deals to only go to the people who had access to where those deals were being put together. Crowdfunding sort of helps to create a different market. And there's all these problems with crowdfunding right now, but I think the major problem, like Abdul Hakim said, is the lack of regulations, which sort of leaves the individual companies to regulate themselves. So I was having a bit of an informal conversation with somebody from the SEC in Ghana a few weeks ago, and I sort of made a joke that, look, So he was explaining to me that, look, we're working on these regulations and they'll come up very soon. And I said, look, it's in my best interest as a company for you to regulate my industry, because then it helps to create best practices. Like if there's no trust in the industry, it affects me. If there's like a bad player in my industry, it also affects me badly. And the lack of regulations also mean that we cannot innovate. You know, we always have to be extremely careful, and all these problems around guaranteeing financing and all those kinds of things. So yeah, I definitely see the lack of regulations as maybe the biggest problem. But it's kind of, you know, the regulations don't go first. It's the entrepreneurs who go there first, and then the regulators have to catch up. That's just the way of the world.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with you.
yeah, so I mean, here in Ghana, we're trying our best. The crowdfunding companies in Ghana, we've come together to try to form some form of association to sort of make ourselves put forward best practices, because like I said, a healthy market benefits everyone, including us. So that's kind of where we are, and we're working actively very hard on that. At CoFunding, we have a lot of guardrails to make sure that some of these issues don't arise, and I'm happy to talk about those in the course of the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to come back to Daniel. Okay, I want you to throw a bit more light on how your diasporan group is trying to do this in Ghana, even though the regulations for crowdfunding is not in place yet.
Yeah, so well, I guess it depends, right? Who is being regulated, you know? So I think you know, a lot of common aspects for crowdfunding is that you'll put your money together and form a company like an SPV, you know, of different stakeholders. And so if you look at like how a lot of people are structuring like crowdfunding, and I know a few people are trying to set up in the UK as well. So they'll bring the money together and that'll consummate, you know, the shares in a new company, an SPV. So you say you register a limited company in the US, in the UK, and it's then that company that buys the house in Ghana or in Nigeria. So if you look at it in that regards, you know, locally, there's no crowdfunding being taken, and it's a company buying the property. You know, and then doing the facilities management on the difference between crowdfunding and like in a SUSU, you know, like a group savings organization that also buys property. So, you know, I understand the need to regulate, but, you know, like I think Emeka said, you know, entrepreneurship will always, you know, come first and drive the path. So I think, you know, looking at ways that people are getting around it, you know, doing forming SPVs abroad and letting the SPV buy the company, forming SPVs, you know, special purpose vehicles locally and buying the company. So I think, you know, that gives an additional opportunity for how it could be done. And we look at, you know, beyond Ghana, Nigeria, like in South Africa, Stockfells, which is like the version of SUSUs or SACCOs in Kenya. Many of these are set up to buy properties. So I think maybe we could look at some of the institutions that already exist and are regulated and see, you know, how those also would tie in.
Okay, great. I mean, from the way you have explained that, I see how that kind of structure is working. Now, Akim, the question that I want to ask, okay, being also a major player in the Nigerian space, so why is the real estate sector waiting for regulation when the agricultural sector, okay, is already crowdfunding? There are best practice already. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So you are a proponent of PropTech in Nigeria. You are someone who's lobbying to help to push PropTech in Nigeria also. So why is the agricultural sector able to get away with crowdfunding, and the real estate sector isn't? And I don't know whether this is also happening in Ghana, you know, but I know that if you look at Kenya, for example, you have the same thing happening. If you look at other countries in the region, you know, so when it's just PropTech, it looks like there's a whole myth or difficulty around it. Why is this?
Yeah, I think it's largely based on the variation of the business models. Investing in property through crowdfunding is quite different from investing in an agricultural business in Nigeria. Here, you know, the cash flow requirements, and then the disposition of the assets is also important, and then the ownership structure also is another key thing. You know, when you're crowdfunding, for instance, and I'm sitting somewhere in America and I own a share of a particular property in Lagos, what kind of documentation are you giving to me And then is it legally transferable? What kind of exit strategy can I have if I no longer want to remain in that particular project? So being able to have a developer who understands the metrics is required for this is very key, especially in the property business. Like I said, we don't just have the legal requirements that support this. In developed markets, you have situations where titles are actually broken down or can actually be protected with blockchain technology, and then that makes it quite easy for people to own variations of stakes in property. We don't have that, which is backed by law, but we don't have that in Nigeria. However, with the agriculture side of things, you find out that these crowdfunding are done not to raise equity by any means, but rather it's more sort of like a donation kind of a thing. So it's done in a very unstructured manner in which you just pull funds together, and I can guarantee you that if I sell a certain amount of product in a given time, these are the returns that I'm going to get. And because the government has pushed heavily on agriculture and trying to make that a staple center for raising jobs in Nigeria, there's a lot of businesses that have sort of migrated into that, which works. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. The only issue really is in people feeling that their investments are well protected and the returns that have been promised to them is actually guaranteed to them. And again, Daniel touched on something very, very important, especially in real estate. The attraction to these kind of investments are the yields. You know, if I'm not getting the requisite yield that you're given, that you promised to me, which is legally binding, then I really.
Oh wow! It's as if we lost. Yeah, like we lost Akeem, right? Daniel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think Hakeem froze.
I think it's connection. Yeah, I think it's connection. Okay, so while we wait for Hakeem to come back, Daniel, I wanted to talk about the yields. Okay, so looking at the market today, what would you say is the best yield or the most attractive yield? You know, looking from what Hakeem just said in terms of agriculture. So if we come to real estate, what kind of yields are we looking at? You know, and what are the kind of yields would you know that's happening in the agricultural sector that's making it very attractive?
Yeah, I think agriculture, you're looking at high yields. I think in short time span, especially because the developers are looking. The farmers are looking for short capital, right? Because I think what's agriculture also different to look at. Kind of Keem said, it's a short, return timeline, whereas housing is going to look at potentially years down the road, and I would just touch on maybe a few things that Ghana is doing. Look, I think what Emeka we should touch on as well is the fact that they crowdfund for development financing. So it's much different than the average crowdfunding model to buy houses because, right, there you can give a guaranteed yield because the developer is the one in agreement rather than the housing. So we always look at crowdfunding to buy a house, right, then sell it. But there's also the option of crowdfunding for construction finance for the developer. And we might see that as the more logical yield. I want to touch on a few things that's happening in Ghana, which, I think Nigeria, definitely needs to look at and see how we can replicate, is that what we're seeing definitely in Ghana right now, especially I think for the year of return, is properties. So studio apartments, one beds, a lot of studio apartments that are selling very fast. And what you see is that a lot of these developers are making partnerships with, say, the embassies, corporates for travel, and what they're actually doing is guaranteeing the yields on investment. So I've, a developer working in Ghana that says 5% guaranteed for a first year. We've others guaranteeing up to 8%. And I think you can be in the hills and get to think about this other one than just on the buy side. Maybe Emeka, I don't know if Emeka wants to touch on that aspect.
Yeah, yeah, just like you said, I think you mentioned something about the unpredictability of returns for crowdfunding in real estate. But what we do, since we provide development finance, you can to a very large extent predict how much the house is going to sell for. And I think when it comes to crowdfunding, the most important thing right now is complete transparency with the people who are participating. So that's something we try to do, whereby we say, look, this is exactly how much we project, but it's just a projection based on all these conditions. So for example, when COVID happened, for example, you could easily say to people, look, this is what's happening. And maybe we promised we're going to be able to sell in March, but due to COVID, we can't do any viewings, we can't take anybody anywhere. So that might be a bit of a problem. So it's really all the companies involved being a bit innovative about the way that we sort of structure our projects and the way we structure the financing to bring ease to people who are currently who are trying to sort of participate. Because again, anybody who's participating right now will be considered an early adopter. So they are a bit cognizant of the risks and are to a large extent willing to sort of accept it. So it's the different methods and the different ways that people want to go about crowdfunding here in Ghana. But just like you said, the partnerships that people sort of create with all these corporate organizations can, to a large extent, also help to guarantee some of those returns.
Hey guys, I think I just got off my network for some reason. I don't know if Roland is online because I can't see him.
I think Roland lost his network as well.
He's trying to get him.
I can do it. Okay. Yeah, do okay. You can pick up where you
Hakeem, sorry, before you left, you were basically looking at yield, and I asked Daniel to pick up that issue of yield, between what the yield is in agriculture and then in the real estate. And I think Chukwuemeka also alluded to that fact. But in some way, I think I want to throw some hope in terms of regulation for crowdfunding, so that we can move into the listing part of this conversation. So in Nigeria, for example, just like Hakeem mentioned, the Security and Exchange Commission, they've done, I think, a second exposure draft for a crowdfunding regulation, and I think we've had the opportunity to also make some input. I think the COVID slowed down the passage of that regulation, to be in effect. So the hope is that by Q1 2021, that crowdfunding regulation will be on, and we can really see crowdfunding activities across all the sectors, not just what is happening in agriculture. Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to throw some light into that before we move ahead in the conversation.
Well, Roland, I hope you're able to advise them to reduce the registration, the capital registration at 100 million to a little bit more reasonable rate for startup companies.
I think you might be muted, Roland.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Roland.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
Yes.
Okay. So what I was saying is that at 100 million naira, okay, these startups are already at Series B funding. If you know what I mean. If you have 100 million naira, they're already at Series B funding. So we made that note in the conversation to say that, because agri is entirely different from real estate, and like all of us have said, the issues of pipeline, of registration, of collateral, of guaranteed investment are issues. So, but then you bring that up is a challenge. But one recommendation, and Chukwuemeka, this is something that I also think you can also begin to look at in Ghana, and it's what we're trying to do here in Nigeria, is to find traditional real estate players, those who have the resources and the muscle, to try and incubate some of the PropTech startups. So that way, investment from these traditional real estate players, can be, so the traditional real estate players can have upside in the investment, but according to what Hakeem has said, at 100 million naira, which is 100 million naira is around
150,
close to around 200, about 250,000 or $200,000 in terms of Nigeria. It's a lot. That's a lot of money for startup. Okay, so I want to jump into the future of listing. I know that all of you guys are experts in that listing area. So I'll start with Daniel. Okay, where are we in terms of listing in the region? I mean, I know you're doing a lot in the blockchain and all of that. Are there traction? I'll tell you the question I want to ask, okay? What traction has happened in terms of growth? I'm not looking at profitability, but in terms of capture, what has happened in listing business in the region? And you can give examples of where you have, where you are currently doing business. So I'll start with Daniel.
Yeah, I think it's the listing business in Africa I think it's very, very interesting. And I think when we look at it that following a trajectory, I think of other, the US, UK, other major, markets, in the sense that, we started with traditional, listing sites, really where just people are paying per listings. And we can see a lot, Nigeria with Nigerian Property Center. I saw NPC is now in Ghana, Kenya, Uganda. I think people know Property 24, owned by Naspers. We also have Rome, Africa, run by Ringier in Germany in 7 markets. So I think it's quite interesting that there's a few players that are in many markets. So, and very well funded. Naspers, for instance, with Prop 24. But I think, partly we haven't seen, huge adoption onto the listing sites. And I think partly is because, what we do at Sesso is trying to bring more than just the properties onto the listing sites. So one, when you're buying a property, you might need access to financing. You might need access to a lawyer, to other service providers. I think, as we saw in Zalman's presentation, the agents themselves might need more tools than just the average listing. So I think where we're at now is that the first step was really to get everything online, which is a huge effort to have listing sites in general, and that they're big now. We have huge markets, we have players that are starting in Nigeria and elsewhere that are expanding, across the continent, which is amazing. And I read an interesting article last week by Zillow, and Zillow said that their aim for the next years is to get further away from listings and closer to the transactions. So you see in the US, people are doing these iBuying platforms, being closer to the transaction. And that's what I think we'll all see is that, we started out by just making email introductions to our mortgage bank partners, but we realized that that really doesn't solve the problem because the experience is bad, the documentation is bad. So trying to integrate that more. So I think what we'll see is more and more solutions that are targeting the players on the traditional listing sites. So agency solutions, crowdfunding solutions, other type of service providers on the marketplace. And in reality, what I think we'll see is that, the listing sites potentially will still be there, and these will be integrated because, there's not one company that's going to solve all the problems in buying property. So I think, we have now a volume of properties digital, and now it's about getting closer to the transaction, providing services for the stakeholders, in the ecosystem.
Okay, great. So Chukwuemeka, I mean, just hearing from Daniel, right? So what would you say in terms of in Ghana? Do you think there's going to be the same trend or the same evolution where listing sites are either they are now starting to get closer to the transactions, or they're still just a listing site? What is the trend, or what is the evolution like in Ghana?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to listing properties here in Ghana, it's still very, very much in the infancy stage. A lot of people buying property is still a very physical experience for a lot of people. People want to go there and see how they feel when they are inside the property. So what the listing site really does for a lot of people is aggregates real viable properties that are genuinely and verifiable. So thereby saving the person who's buying all that stress. So I think one of the ways to right now, like I said, still in the infancy, people just use listing platforms to see what's available, contact the seller, and organize physical site visits for themselves. So that's pretty much the work that a lot of the listing platforms do. But I think that it's going to definitely change over the next few years as the listing platforms become a bit more careful about the kind of property developers they're allowed to list on the platform. And if the listing platforms themselves can, to a large extent, verify the information that the property developer is listing, that would encourage more people to sort of buy sight unseen, which is kind of what you want to go for at the end of the day. I think that during the pandemic, some listing platforms that we sort of conversed with explained that some of the issues they were having was we can't do site visits, we can't take anybody to anywhere, so we have to do virtual listings. And while that didn't really take off as much as it maybe should have, the fact that some people were willing and open to that opportunity kind of helped to drive that adoption, and I think it's going to begin to show itself over the next few years. And then the second thing is the Ghanaian diaspora. They participate very heavily in the property market here in Ghana. So for those ones, they kind of don't have a choice. Okay. They kind of have to rely on the information that the listing platform is providing. So what I think is listing platforms need to now step up and take responsibility for certifying some of what they are allowed to list on the platform. And then that would give people more confidence to allow themselves to perform those transactions on the platform without having to break the chain of now seeing what they want to see, then completing the rest of it offline.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. So Akim, how do you see this? How do you see this trajectory in Nigeria? I mean, there are a lot of listing sites in Nigeria. Do you think there is any attempt to get into towards transaction? I know that at Zama, you guys are doing a lot, in terms of how and where you want to play. So what are your thoughts, looking at the Nigerian market and looking at, for example, the ad buying platform? There are several ad buying platforms globally now, just like Daniel also mentioned. You think we're going to get to that point where a listing site will just begin to buy off properties with the hope to resell? You're laughing. So how's it going? I mean, what do you think is happening within the space in Nigeria?
Well, thanks for that question. The vision really at Zama is for us to get to that level. Honestly speaking, we're not there yet. Since we launched, there's been a lot of growing pains, and there's a lot of education that we learned from the market. And it's interesting for you to understand the context of what you're saying. Your question really is to understand really how the Nigerian market plays. And some of the key requirements that we see that have to basically work for us to get there are two things. The education of the market, and then the second aspect also has to do with working collaboratively with all the regulators within our market. These are very key because there's a lot of education that needs to go into the agents. How to even function as a real estate agent, as a professional, is an issue. For them to not to talk of them even being able to go online and list on a platform accurately. And then again, the key variable here really is data. There's no data in our market. A lot of what you see is basically based on intuition or hearsay or what transmitted communication between individuals. But with real estate being a very capital-intensive business, it's important that decisions are supported by data. So one of the things that Zama is trying to do is to give the consumers access to these data. So you're not just buying a property because a listing platform says it's 40 or 50 million or 100 million. It's because you're seeing that is actual transacted data, which is why our partnership and collaboration with research companies like Estate Intel is very important to us, because we don't want to just take your word for it. We want the consumer to say, yes, I'm purchasing this or I'm negotiating on this rate simply because these are actual transacted data. And it's not as though the authorities don't have access to this data. They do. It's just about making it public for people to see. Again, that transparency obviously is been held back for various reasons, political reasons. Some individuals don't want people to know they own certain properties. So the lack of transparency in our market is a big issue. But for us to get there, we literally have to bite the bullet, take the bulls by the horns, and actually release this data for the public to see, so that we can actually be able to make informed decisions. The international market want to come in, but they're not going to come in to make decisions based on your intuition. They want to make decisions based on data, actual data. They want to know what's going on, what are the variations of rates, what are the investment, what's going on in your business climate as an industry. So for us to actually get the real estate industry to that level, we have to do the right thing. We have to open our market. You can see what emerging markets like Dubai are doing. If I want to purchase a property in Dubai, I just go to Dubai Lands Department and I can click on any of the municipalities and be able to find actual data on property prices. So these data sets that have already been provided force the agents to actually operate in a more professional manner, because people will do their due diligence, they'll do their own homework. So it's something that we have to work together at, and I think this is one of the reasons why we set up Zama, because we saw this this opportunity in our market. And we're doing our best to make sure that we bring all the parties together, so that when you go on Zama, and you contact an agent, you're dealing with an agent that has been vetted. No property, for instance, on our platform gets listed without documentation. So Zama actually acts as a principal to hold some of these titles so that we can verify that these are properties that have been permitted for disposal or for rental. So these are the unique things that we've implemented on our platform to make sure that there's a correction in transaction space. And Roland, just like you and I want, we want to get to that point where people can easily be able to transact and transfer ownership of property without necessarily leaving the comfort of their rooms. And Africa has everything it takes. We just have to have the political will to do it. So we have everything it takes. It's just about are we ready to do what's required? So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, great. I mean, and this becomes very, very critical, the issue of data, because and that transparency with a lot of opacity that can happen. And I think that this is where I would definitely encourage also for a lot of the people working with governments, who are part of this conference, where the role of government actually comes in. And for example, what we're seeing in Lagos State in Nigeria is where the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority is now trying to ensure that for every real estate transactions that happen in Lagos, it is loaded on the platform. So that way, at the back end of the platform, you can actually have that data. And now when you have all of that data, then the kind of things that we've been talking about can actually happen. Now, I think in moving forward, I've just been told that we have just about 5 minutes to wrap up. So I'm just going to give each one of us, about a minute to say, we'll be talking about property technology, right? What are the key things you think that would help in pushing this market forward? When I mean help, I'm talking about what is going to attract investors, okay? How are we going to get capture, and how are we going to get attraction for a lot of people to come onto doing transactions in property technology? Because I see that, over this has taken about 10 years for Europe and the US, and we can see the likes of Zillow and all of that. So let's take the question I'm asking is, let's take a 5 to 10 year horizon. What do we need to be doing? If prop tech really needs to become something like fintech, as we have seen the growth of fintech. So I'll start with you, Chukwuemeka.
Thank you very much. I love the question you asked, because that forces us to sort of have a longer term vision as to how we see the market growing. And one of the things that I think is very important is something I call data share. If you go abroad, the financial institutions tend to be able to share information about, what's going on, who is a credible player, and who should we transact with, what's this person's credit rating, and things like that. If we, both in Ghana and across Africa, and hopefully in the future across Africa, we can begin to create a shared database where I, as a crowdfunding platform, can check, look, a developer approaches me and says, look, I want to raise funds with your platform. I can check to see that somebody else has done some due diligence on him, and that he has come out as a valuable player, as a credible player. I can then make decisions based on that. They can also check, and since we are selling properties based on the properties that we are developing, we can also share those data with listing platforms like Seso Global and Pharma, who can then verify the value of properties in those regions. We can also use that information to verify all the information that the developer is bringing to us. I think that will help to accelerate our growth. Now, while it's good to look at the trajectory that the PropTech industry abroad has taken, I think we can sort of blaze our own path, taking some inspiration from them, yes, but being able to share data among ourselves as companies will sort of definitely accelerate growth with us as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Quickly, over to you, Daniel. Hello, Daniel, can you hear me? Okay, Akim, quickly, wrapping up.
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks. Yeah, a quick one.
Daniel is here now, yeah.
So, yeah, personally, I think PropTech. Okay. Just say quickly, I personally think PropTech will be bigger than fintech industries, real estate, in any country. And I agree with Emeka said. I do think there's not too many forums like this. we're all so busy with things, maybe getting together. But then we definitely need more advocacy, like I think, Roland, you said, of getting corporates to try out. I mean, it doesn't hurt. Like, if NISB wanted to do something, with a brokerage platform, I'm sure Zam would be up for it. We were really always willing to trial things with new clients. I'm sure if a developer wanted a custom cut to do, he would make it happen. So I think it would be great if they give more confidence from the developers in the industry to to trial these companies out, to back them, and eventually invest. We look abroad, who are the biggest investors in prop tech? It's JLL, it's CBRE, it's the real estate companies who see this new market.
Correct.
So I think we'll have a great smooth transition if we start with piloting and bringing the companies together, and many of them with some of these successful pilots can turn into scale ups and investment. So I really think just trialing it out and finding what works with the established players.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Quickly, Akeem.
Yeah. As for me, I think three things. It's all about education, transparency in our market, and then access to data. These are the three key variables that we need to make our market stronger. Once people have access to data, investors will come. Once there's transparency, investors will come. There will be something to invest. There will be better opportunities that will be open to the market. And then again, the education of both market players, that is the investors and also the real estate agents, need to do better. They need to be properly educated before making decisions. Again, keying into access to information, access to data. So please, again, support us whatever you can. Let's work together. Let's have a lot of collaboration and integrated partnerships within the PropTech, association. We can basically leverage on each other's technology and be able to provide a more seamless opportunities for the clientele, and then the investors again will see the opportunities. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks, Roland.
Oh, great. So thanks so much, everyone, for this session. And I think that, just like you've said, Akeem, we all need to work together, from Kenya to Ghana to Lagos to everywhere, to be able to push this. So I think that's about all that we are about to take in this session. I want to thank you guys, and I'm very enthusiastic, like everyone. I'm happy that Daniel is saying that we're going to be bigger than fintech. So I can't wait for that to happen, and so we're going to keep working together. So thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the session. Over to you, Katri.